Now this morning we have a really unusual set of circumstances, and we're going to try to take advantage of the good ones. I'm trying to sequence out this day so I can get the most done given the conditions that we have outside. Now I always say in the middle of the winter, when I'm doing my restorations, I always like to have outdoor jobs, basically painting, and indoor jobs for days it's raining and snowing. So I try to do a restoration in such a way that there's always something outdoor to do and something indoor to do. And I woke up this morning unexpectedly after a day yesterday where the weather was perfect for paint and clear, one of the nicest days of the winter, and it is terrible out there. It's supposed to rain all day. So the first thing I did even before flipping the chargers, I went out, took all the parts for the FZR, brought them down into the shop where it's nice and warm. And it's supposed to be miserable and raining and cold the whole day. But let me explain why that's a good thing. So the first thing in sequencing, I did not hear from Turbo Steve today if he wanted to come over and do some sanding. When I don't hear from him, I know he's busy doing whatever it is he does in witness protection. But of course that could change in the course of the day, and we do have a lot of sanding here. But the other part of this is there'll be no painting today. Even if it stops raining, the humidity will be to the moon. So we'll put his job aside first thing. So with all of the FZR parts here, I'm looking them over, and the first thing I have to decide is I look around to see if there are any big areas I need to repair or flaws, something that I would have to address right away. And it looks like the only one I have is there's a little spot on this fairing, and you notice what I did, I hung it up by the heating vent so that can dry an extra day before I get to work on it. I want that paint to get as hard as a rock before I start working on it. And that looks like a little minor thing. I don't think it'll be a problem. The rest of the parts look the usual things, a little dust in the part, and the edges, of course, where all of these are not buried and clear yet. These are just the two base coats of clear that we did yesterday. But notice from sequencing this well, we got the paint done on a beautiful day, and a rainy day like today, we can do some sanding and buffing. And what I want to do is I want to start, because we're in the process now, the final steps of finishing. I want to try to really detail out how I've done it in the past, because you may be able to pick up some information you can use. And of course, depending on what paint you're using, this is Modern Automotive Paint 5-star clear. This one is pretty much ready for buffing. This one's ready for buffing. The tank's ready. I'd let the tank, at least all the other parts, at least dry an extra day or so. And what I found is, and it's really good information, the longer I let this dry, the easier it is to sand and buff. Now I just happened to get a real nice email from Ruben McBride, friend of mine that lives in Nevada, in Las Vegas, an excellent modeler, and he's been watching the videos and picking up a lot of the stuff. In fact, he's using 5-part clear now on some of his projects. So always look forward to hearing from people that enjoy picking up information, because when I watch YouTube, and it's pretty much for me, not much else on TV. I'm not into the candle after stuff, but I do. It's amazing what good information I've gotten from YouTube over the years. Thank you everybody that contributes. Anybody that works with me in the shop knows we don't start off a day without a big cup of Karen coffee, because it's going to be a long, wet, damp day. We're going to hopefully get a lot done today. Now, whenever I shoot clear, this is one of the tests I always do. This is a very funny thing. You notice this is the paint that I used yesterday, so it's now basically 18 hours old. But I always like to see that paint has hardened up nice, and if you put your finger in there, it's like Jello, but it is hardened. And this is the first lesson of any paint: is all paint, no matter what you do, has a dry time. The dry time is dependent upon the shop conditions, the temperature, the humidity, mostly the temperature. Anything that has a catalyzed formula, in other words, that you mix part A and part B, even epoxy, even polyester resin, if you heat it, it'll dry quicker. if you get it cool, it'll kind of last longer and longer and longer. And it's why we keep the hardener from the two-part paint. Just the hardener stays in the refrigerator, not the paint, just the hardener. It prolongs the life. Anytime I'm doing any intense buffing or sanding, it just reminds me of the years modeling and how much fun that was. And I have some pictures I wanted to share. These are 9 or 10-year-old pictures. Now, one thing's really nice. This is one of the two strokes that I did for Luciano, and this was one, I think Ray still owns this one, or Malcolm owns it. But we did two of them, the one winter along with my bike. Now I have two things. These are some old days of, we did a track day at Millville. Luciano and I did. Now Luciano may remember this, but we were in the lottery system here, and Luciano won a free track day. I bet he forgets that I was the one that heard it over the loudspeaker and got him the free track day. Now, if you look in the background, you'll notice Joe Adamusco is here. He joined us this day. He had an on-road, off-road bike at this point in time. He came down, joined us for track day. And here the kids telling him, yeah, your bike passed tech, but your friend Wendy got you a free track day. Wow. Now this goes back to Luciano's famous racing days with his 5-gallon can of nitromethane. And I'll bet you any money when he sees these pictures, he is going to miss his TZ. He'll be so sorry he sold that TZ. I'm sorry he sold that little pit bike too. We had fun on that pit bike. Now look how handsome we were 10 years ago. This is 10 years ago. And look, there's the FZR being restored right now, 10 years later. Oh my God. Now Luciano was really doing well this day. He had 2 different bikes to ride. I forget if I got to ride this blue Suzuki. I forgot. Anybody's ever been to Millville knows it's a great track. It's really a load of laughs. And by the way, I have some 10-year-old video. I'm going to have John help me convert it. It's on flip video of all things that Joe Adamusco shot of us going around the track. But when I think of 10 years ago, how much fun we were having back then. Wow, this was an amazing time to be alive. He's one of my favorite people in the whole world. Joe Adamusco, a world-class modeler, a great friend, and I don't know if he's still riding a motorcycle. And I know he took the picture and went up on top of the tower there and got some video, but we're going to see what John can get us. We're trying to convert it. It's old flip video. And here we are restoring this bike 9 or 10 years later. I think it's 9 years. And right there, that's the best pit bike you could ever have. Boy, that thing is a load of laughs. And whenever I see these old pictures and video, I'm always inspired to do better and better work. Drink coffee and watch old videos. A nice picture of Luciano passing some of the 4-strokes with that TZ. I bet you wish you had your TZ back. And there he is in the middle getting ready to eat up another 4-stroke. What a great day we had. We really had a great day. Anyway, thank you Joe Adamusco for shooting those pictures and video. We really appreciate it. It's great memories. Back to work. On the first test, and starting any new part that has to be sanded, I'm going to try the Mirka 2500. Now I always start by doing a little test. Take a little piece of sandpaper. This paint has been drying a week, maybe a little more. But anyway, and it's been in a warm cellar. As we spray, because we don't have a spray booth, we don't have a controlled environment, we don't have heat and humidity control, so every batch of paint might be just a little bit different. Where if you were in a body shop environment, you always oven bake everything, it dries with a minimum of dust. Well, we don't have that luxury. But this is a very simple skill. Once you can pick this skill up, it serves you for the rest of your life. And Joe Adamusco was one of the ones that was really good at this, by the way. Now, I'm just going to pick a spot on this. Here's the things not to do. Number 1, don't grind on an edge, because that edge, you're going to go right through. Don't grind up into a corner. It's going to be a problem. So I just want a 2500 grit takes a little bit longer than you think it will to sand to get it flat. It's well worth the effort. Now, if this doesn't cut the way I want, I have 2000 grit and I have 1500, 1200, 1000. The problem is the bigger the grit you have, I'm inclined to think maybe I should get some 3000 next time I go to Gavin's. The reason, the scratches that come into it, to get the scratches out, you've got to compound material away. It takes time and it takes work. So you would, in a perfect world, you would use the biggest, the smallest number that wouldn't leave scratches. Well, let's just take a quick look at this, because this can get to be pretty labor intensive. Now, if you look at it real close, you see this is shiny, this is flat, but see the little moon craters? That's a piece of dust. We're just going to sand away until this whole part is flat. I wanted to show this up close and personal. This is something Karen gets for me from her beauty supply place. I don't even know what it is. It's a soft nail file. It's actually like a thick sponge. Now, I don't use the sandpaper. The sandpaper you could use, obviously, but here's what I do with this that works really well. I take a piece of my 2500 sandpaper, just big enough that I can go around both pieces. Now, I don't want to have the nail file sticking out. I want to just have it in there. I don't want to have the rougher grit. But with this grit, when I have a moon crater, somewhere on here, a moon crater, I call this the moon crater remover. This takes, see, your finger presses down on a very small footprint. This is a nice wide footprint, but it's not a hard block that would dig in. Because at this point in time, I don't want anything digging in. This would be the hardest thing I want to have on this paint, especially if you're doing this only a couple of days after the paint it isn't really super hard yet. If you were doing something that's old paint, that's a year old or something, or a 40-year-old motorcycle, you don't have to worry. But when paint is new, it's soft. But this is a tool that you could use to your advantage. You'll find things to use it. In fact, I just told Karen the next time she heads out to this place that she buys this stuff, get me a half a dozen of them or so. What I wanted to do is explain what candling is. Candling is we have a bright light and I can see the reflection. I don't know exactly when because I can't see accurately through the camera. At some point in time, you see a little reflection. It also is going to show me any flaws that are still in here. Any little shiny spots. And not these wet spots. This is just wet because I have water on my glove. But being able to candle, when you have it sanded and you want to find the little mistakes, I think I can pick up the light right there. The light is walking across the part. And once I have no flaws at all, I'm ready for buffing compound. Now, all this stuff's available from Harbor Freight. Again, I don't know. I think this is about $5. These are about 15 with a coupon. They're 12. It's an orbital, a palm sander. They make, you can buy these for a couple $100, even the real quality ones. For what we're doing, this is fine. When they burn out, you go get another one for $12. But I would always start a job with a brand new pad. What happens is, I'm going to take one of these out if I can do this one-handed. Yeah, I can't do it one-handed. I lied, I can do it one-handed. The pads are so cheap that what happens, once you use it and you're done with a job, you put it away for a year. In fact, you get two for the price of one here. Look at this. But you should always use a new pad. And this is, at this point in buffing it out, not real critical because we're not at the final stages. This is just going to do a rough buffing. All we're going to do with this product, or this right here, is a rough knocking of the surface down. Now this is pretty funny, and to show you how bad I am, this is the best stuff I found. I wrote on it best. It's 4C 8021. The problem is there's almost none left. So there's no point even using it. I'm going to have to buy a new, and I will I have to go down to Gavin's, local body shop supply, and get this in the next couple days. So it's going to allow me to do something that I normally wouldn't do. I have several other choices of polish. Every one of the polishes that you can buy, and you can buy these for, this is about $7. You can buy them up to $50 for, and the 4C stuff's real expensive. but they all contain a grit. The grit is what does the work. The rest of it is just a carrier. So what I tried to do, and let's see if I can get some of this out. This is coming. You can tell I'm really in charge of this. I never want to let this stuff sit out in the garage overnight freezing. It just turns to where it decomposes or whatever it does. And you still can mix it up and whatever, but I like to put a little bit of this on. And I want to just do a little test. First thing, I think I omitted this. Here's the sandpaper that we used. There's no chewing gum on it at all. If you see little dots of chewing gum, it means the paint is too soft. Let the paint harden. If you can do it by a heating vent, even better. Polishing is going to be the same way. If the gloss doesn't come up in a reasonable amount of time. Now, if we were doing a model plane, you wouldn't really be using a buffer. You'd be doing everything by hand. It takes a little more time. These little polishers are really, they're very easy to use. There's only one problem. You don't want to hook edges. You don't want to catch that. You don't want to ever try to buff an edge, polish it. You don't want to catch that point. Now, by just sitting there, this is the point at which it's relatively easy. It's going to take some time. I'll do one of these things in fast forward, or maybe more, because you're going to just be bored to death watching this. But at some point in time, you take a look at it, and we've got what I call the rough buffing. See, that's rough. I know a lot of people would say, well, I like that. That's enough for me. No, that's not. Because we have no sand, because we did 2500, we have no sanding scratches. Now, I could even buff the rest of this by hand. I'll probably do this area by hand because I don't want to catch an edge. But it just takes time. If you just sit here, I used to watch football games and just be there with a model plane because you really never used a buffer on a model plane. But you can see if the paint comes up quickly like that. Now, and this is not my first choice of polish. The 4C makes it come up a lot faster, but I don't have enough to do this. And a final step on all buffing is always to go over the whole part by hand with a clean microfiber. Gently go around the edge. Gently. Like gentle Ben here. Anyway, this, if you have, once you know how to do this, the door is open to doing a lot of really cool stuff. Now, one of the things that I've done, and I've painted guitars for my kids. I've painted outboard engine covers for Ray and Frank over the years. I've just done a lot of things. For the late George Venturini, I painted a bumper on his car, and the bumper actually looked better than the rest of the car when we were done. But the whole point is, you've got to, at some point in time, unless you have a friend in a body shop business or somebody who's a real craftsman, teach you this. You can learn a lot of it on YouTube, and I would say every time I watch YouTube, I seem to learn something. But now, if you could picture what this looked like, this was a scrap part. This was actually a junk part at one point in time, but it's ready for the final buff out with the sponge and the big orbital buffer. Now, when I say we have better than a factory finish, I'm really not kidding. And that might even include a lot of the high-end cars. Because when you want this, it's very predictable how to do it. It's time-consuming, not really expensive, but there's a lot of labor involved. And when this motorcycle is all put together, or your model airplane, or your guitar, you will have something very special. So it's worth, to me, it's worth learning how to do this, and it's worth practicing. And when you can do it, you're a ninja. What I always say is you don't see the real color, the real Yama yellow color, until that all the clear is on it. It's buffed out, of course. All the flaws are fixed. I see this has still got, it has to be sanded, of course, but what a difference. Wow. Now, I just think when this motorcycle's all put together and we've got it waxed, and of course the final buffing will be with the soft sponge, the white sponge on the big buffer just before we put it together. That really came out nice. And you can do it too, believe me. There's no part of this I've held back on. It's everything I've learned over the years, right on these videos. So the next part, and the reason I'm doing these parts, pretty simple, because that paint has been aged. The other parts, obviously, they need more clear, number one, but letting the paint age, and I know people, I know there's counterpoints against it. There's people that say do it at 24 hours, at 48. But I found my shop conditions in freezing cold weather, when I spray the paint, let it sit out in the garage overnight, which is about a 12-hour cycle, maybe more. Bring it into a warm house, let it sit for another 12 hours. It's still soft. When I drag the sandpaper, it's like it's digging into the mud. I always say digging into the mud. So these parts, I have the fender, I have another side thing. These are all parts that have aged out. They're more than a week old. We're going to be ready to sand this out. In fact, this one has a couple of flaws up here I need to work on. I'm going to use my sanding stick, and nothing different than that first part. It's just, this is going to have to be buffed, a lot of it by hand, because the buffer won't go in. But it's just going to take a little more time if I do it that way. You could do the whole thing by hand. In the world of model planes, we do the whole plane by hand. So this is just makes it a little bit easier. Okay, now with that all flat sanded out, that last thing should have been in fast forward. Otherwise, it really gets boring to watch, believe me. Now I want to see how much of this I can do with the buffer, and whatever I can't do, then I've got to do the rest by hand with a microfiber. Now, there's always spots you can't get the buffer to go, and you have to do by hand, unfortunately. Motorcycle parts sometimes have areas that you just have to basically tough it out. Do it by hand. Get it, then it takes a little more time, but the result is exactly the same. Now, whatever parts we get done today, and I don't know because this is the kind of a day that we never know what time they're bringing Miles over. So whenever he comes over, I've got to clear off the table and turn this into Legoland. So, but we did get a lot done so far today. And we'll just go right to the bottom of the ninth here. This part is going to come out when I'm done with it. And you can see I still got a lot to do, but I'll go right to the end. That's going to be real nice when it's done. Well, there was a lot of hand labor buffing this part out because of the unusual shape, but it's done. I've got time for one more little part. I'll get that other fender part done. And then the lovely Karen Artnowski has told me it's time to become Grandpa Windy. Now, to me, all the work and effort I put into these parts, it seems well worth it to me. But of course, it's in the eye of the beholder, and some people could care less. They paint their bike flat black while somebody's sitting on it and drive away before the paint's dry, and they think that's cool. Well, that's cool too, but I like this better. What happens when you start doing this kind of work? You start getting fussier and fussier and fussier. It's like eating Karen's cooking. You get fussier and fussier, and the better the food is, you want more better. Anyway, a lot of people would see this finished. This is the part I haven't buffed yet, of course. They would see it and they'd say, wow, that's great. That's fine. And they don't want to put that time in, and they're perfectly okay. And this is, I guess, as good as some factory finishes are. I don't even know. It's not a question of right or wrong. It's what you really want. What I really want is maybe the same as what you really want. I don't know, but I'll get that one done. And some of the tips I put on the video, this is a real handy tool. The 2500 Merca seems to work great on the paint that's cured. We don't know about the paint that's, when I go to do the paint that's only a shorter amount of time old. When it's a week old, this is a great combination. It worked out very well today. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Enjoyed our little nostalgia trip down to Millville. Boy, you know, and as those pictures and video, I'm going to get that video done in the next couple of days. As those pictures and video get older and older, to me they become more and more priceless. Anyway, again, hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.